going to get started. Today we're fortunate to have one of our speakers, Sarah Johnson from Dunebrook. Sarah is a graduate of the University of Michigan with a master's degree in social work. She has worked for Healthy Families and for Head Start in LaPorte County. Before joining Dunebrook, she worked for these things, and now as what she does at Dunebrook is the director of Child Abuse Prevention Council of LaPorte County and Porter counties. So please welcome Sarah.
Hello, thank you all so much for having me. I've been in this position a month and a half now, and this is actually my first community presentation, so I'm extra appreciative of the opportunity. With that being said, if anything's confusing, that's probably why. So I appreciate any constructive criticism at the end to make things clearer and, hopefully more applicable as I go out and do more presentations. So thank you. I was curious how many of you are familiar with Dunebrook, like know about it, have ever, okay, awesome. And then what about with Child Abuse Prevention Month? Has anybody participated in any activities with that in the past? No, okay. So if you have questions as I talk, feel free to raise your hand. If it's something that can wait till the end, I might end up getting to it before we get there. But either way, we'll try to get your questions answered. So Dunebrook is a nonprofit here in LaPorte County. We were established in the mid-'80s, and it actually started as more of a grassroots effort as community members were realizing that we needed to do something to address child abuse and neglect in a more collaborative, holistic way. And so a group formed with some, members of the police departments, DCS, prosecutor's office, and then just other concerned community members to come together, and eventually that became a nonprofit called Dunebrook. It started actually as just a child advocacy center, which those exist around the country, and the focus of those is to provide support when kids have, when there's alleged abuse taking place, that they can have a place to be interviewed in a forensic research-based way, and people who are trained to talk to kids about that, because it's a very, as you can imagine, a difficult subject and a difficult time for the kids and the family members that are involved in that. But then we've grown from there, so we still have a child advocacy center, and I don't know if anyone knows, we're located out on Johnson Road, kind of in between Michigan City and LaPorte. But on the handout that I gave you, it just is a brief overview of some of the programs that we have. So we have the Child Advocacy Center. Last year we did 373 forensic interviews. Those often are scheduled, but sometimes they take place on an emergency basis, on the weekends, sometimes in the middle of the night, depending on what it is that's going on. And we have child advocates that actually accompany those families to court to support them, because it's a very difficult time, but also a complex process and can be really confusing for families too. But we also have a lot of prevention programs, right? Because the hope is that we can prevent abuse and neglect before it gets to the point that we're having to do these interventions and interviewing. So one of the programs that we have, and it's probably the one that we're most known for just because of the number of people that we reach with it, is our public education program. And one of our staff, Sarah Hoyt, she's worked here over 10 years, but she goes to, I think, almost every school in LaPorte County, plus in other surrounding counties, to do body safety classes. So she goes and talks to kids about how to keep themselves safe. They talk about consent and how to go to a trusted adult if someone is, doing something to you or trying to do something to you, with the goal of preventing child sexual abuse, or at least, teaching kids that they can report it and how to report it if something does happen. And so like last year, there were over 350 presentations at 61 schools, so they're super busy during the school year getting out there. Another part of the public education, So that's kind of the youth focus. We also have a program called Stewards of Children, which I think might have been offered at First Presbyterian before, but I'm not positive. And so that is for adults, and it's kind of teaching some of the same stuff, but more how to recognize child sexual abuse and kind of what to do when that happens, along with the impact that it can have on kids at the moment and then also as they grow up. So those are two public education programs. We also do parenting classes, so we have a parenting and family education program. Everything that we do is research-based, so we follow a curricula called Nurturing Parenting, which is really focused on building those bonds and attachment, and then teaching like what to expect with child development, very focused on discipline, and really meeting parents where they're at, because we all are in different places in life, and we all had different parents growing up and caregivers, and it's tough to know what to do and how to raise kids, because they don't come with any book when they are born, and even if they did, it probably would be outdated, and there would be mistakes in it. So those classes, we have group sessions that we do, like at Head Start, Stepping Stone Shelter. We do some standalone ones, and then we also do some individual classes with parents that might need some additional support. And since the pandemic, we've been doing Zoom classes, which we found that even after we're able to all get together in person, those classes are still really helpful to do on Zoom, because sometimes it's just tough to get out if you have kids, and lack of transportation and all of those other things that make it hard to just go places. So we have those classes going on. And then the program that I worked for prior to coming into this position was Healthy Families, which is a home visiting program that serves parents with either when they're pregnant or within 90 days of giving birth. And that's intended to reach at-risk families in our community. The home visiting program, I think, is awesome. We teach child development. We, again, are meeting parents where they're at. Everyone's, at a different place. And do, fun little activities, like little footprints and handprints, and really focus on activities to help build bonding and attachment between caregiver and baby. And we also have a family depot, so families get to use points for diapers and household items and toys, and it's really cool. And if anyone would ever like a tour of Dunebrook, please reach out. We would love to show you around with all the stuff that we have there. So yeah, Healthy Families, last year we had 986 participants, which isn't even including all the family members that we also meet through the process. Often, when we go into homes, it's not just mom and baby. It might also be grandma or grandpa or a cousin or an aunt, and all the siblings too that are there. So that's a great program focused on child development. We do, developmental assessments with families, and yeah, all of the stuff that goes with that, connecting to resources and doing all of those things. And then more recently, so every county in the state of Indiana is intended to have a Child Abuse Prevention Council, which is connected with Prevent Child Abuse America. So that's a national organization, and then at the state level we have Prevent Child Abuse Indiana, and then there's a county level council as well. Not all counties have them, and some have them, but they haven't been super active, which is the case for LaPorte County. So we're actually taking part in a pilot program from the state to implement a new framework that is looking at how all of these different providers and community members that work on child abuse prevention can actually communicate more with each other and come up with shared goals so that we can track progress and see, are we actually doing the stuff that we need to do in the county? Because if not, maybe we could shift our focus and be more effective. Every county is different. Honestly, even within the county, Michigan City is quite different from LaPorte, which is quite different from Kingsford Heights and Rolling Prairie, and everywhere else that is here in LaPorte County. So that's just getting started. I'm sure you will hear more about that as that gets more developed. So let's see. I was also going to talk some about prevention in general, what it is, what are some of the things that contribute to child abuse and neglect, and then Child Abuse Prevention Month Does anyone have questions though about any of the programs that we provide before I continue rambling on?
About interviewing, is that in conjunction with law enforcement in terms of the abuse? How does that go?
Yeah, absolutely. So our Child Advocacy Center staff are part of a multidisciplinary team that includes people from DCS and the prosecutor's office and the sheriff's department or police departments to all come together and work in conjunction so that kids aren't getting interviewed 3, 4, 5, 6 times. They already have to repeat their story so many times, so the intention is that they can all come together and then again, approach it more collaboratively. But yeah, all of those different people are involved.
And that's including the prosecutor as well, if it goes into a trial.
Yeah, yep, correct. Yeah.
For the parent and family education, is there a cost to that for the participants?
Nope, those are free. And often we try to provide, gift cards if they complete the sessions, snacks and that type of thing as part of it, because usually it's at least 10 sessions, so 10 weeks, sometimes it's even more. It's great because, there's a teen program, there's a program for, that's focused on dads, there's, for different age levels. And then, for families that have like active DCS cases open, sometimes those are more, even longer and more in depth.
Is there child care provided?
At some of them we have it, yeah. It depends on the age and who's coming and if we're able to, have it. And a lot of times it's with community partners, so, if we have it at like Head Start, sometimes their staff will be available too to watch the kids. Yeah, because that makes it difficult to learn and talk to other parents if you're also trying to be a parent at the same time. Okay, so, go ahead.
So for your Healthy Families program, one of the things I noticed, especially in my Hispanic background, there is a high spike in cardiovascular disease. Is there a focus on that as well of the program in terms of like diabetes and stuff like that for Healthy Families?
Yeah, so in the healthy, we don't provide that direct health care, but we do connect families to like HealthLink and to get that primary health care. Same thing with like mental health services. Because if you're not healthy, it's really difficult to also be able to provide for your family and with your kids. So yeah, definitely. Thank you. I should add in too, I'll be here afterwards if anyone has any like other specific questions I wanted to ask. Okay, so child abuse prevention. There is kind of an increased awareness and trying to go upstream from abuse and neglect. So I'm sure everyone's heard the metaphor of the babies coming down the waterfall and you're finding them at the bottom and you're going to try to save them and get them out and do what you can to help them, but they just keep coming and they're coming and they're coming. And so figuring out, well, where are they coming from in the first place and trying to prevent them from falling before we're having to deal with, they're here, what do we do with them? Sorry, maybe it's not the best metaphor, but.
I use it.
Okay, there we go.
A lot of people here have heard that. Sometimes I call it, I say that a machine is throwing people into the water, and we need to go and we need to dismantle the machine.
Yes, that is also a good one. Thank you so much, Pastor Erica. Recognizing though that we can have all these programs that come in after the fact and try to deal with what's going on. So we have the foster care system and longer term like mental health services, but the goal is that we're actually preventing these things before they happen. And so trying to go upstream from that and figure out how we can impact abuse and neglect in our community before it gets to that point. Which is not an easy task, as I'm sure is not surprising to anyone. Abuse and neglect, though, it's not taking place in a vacuum, and it's not just taking place in someone's house that is a stranger to us that we don't know. There are a lot of factors that contribute to abuse and neglect. And some of those things surely are taking place in the home. Everyone, comes from a different background and have different types of traumas that they experienced growing up. But also, right, we have things that are happening in a family unit, and there are things that are happening in the neighborhood and the broader community. And like Pastor Erica mentioned during the service, there's also these bigger systemic issues that sometimes, no matter how hard we try to support each other, we still have those things existing around us. Sometimes we don't even realize that they're there because they're so just ingrained, and it's how we live our daily lives. And so starting to look at all of these different factors that contribute to it, because, most people are not waking up and going, I'm going to abuse my kid today. That's just not what is happening. But yeah, so there's a lot of factors that go into this, and we often talk about, they call them protective factors, and this is connected with, it's called Strengthening Families at the national level, but they've done research to find what are things that actually do impact and reduce child abuse and neglect. And some of them are things that are somewhat easier to do, and some of them are a lot harder. And I won't go super into detail with all of them, but if it's something you're interested in, please talk to me afterwards. But the 5 of them are knowledge of parenting and child development. So, right, this comes in when if you think that your 2-year-old is having a tantrum because they're trying to upset you and get back at you for something that you did, it's a lot harder to properly teach and discipline when in reality that's not what is actually happening, because they're trying to figure out how to manage their emotions. The second one is concrete supports, and so these are things like having housing and food, transportation, getting healthcare that you need, childcare, education, and I'm sure all of you could think of even more things that we would add to that list that help keep families in a more stable position. The third one is social connections, and this one, it was really huge when the pandemic hit, because families were already struggling with having social connections, so both family relations, but also friends and other people in the community. And the pandemic just made that even worse as people were more stuck at home. When I was home visiting with moms across LaPorte County, there were a lot of them that didn't even have an emergency contact that they could list, and even more of them that couldn't name a friend that they could turn to if they were struggling. So, we would have moms at home with newborns, and they didn't have anyone to call when they got super stressed out, which happens to, I think, all new moms. It's very difficult. And so that's huge, right? Not having anyone to turn to, and to just provide any of that support, not to mention what that does to you on an emotional and mental level too. The fourth one is social and emotional competence of children, and this is looking at those bonds that get formed so early on. If you are a mom and you're really struggling and you're working multiple jobs, and then also you can't find childcare, and you're moving a lot because you can't find stable housing, it ends up impacting your ability to really bond and attach with your baby and to be with them and spend time with them, and for them to have a trusting adult that they're really connected to. And again, I always want to point out that these aren't really pointing to an individual and going, oh, you are doing X, Y, and Z, and this is why this is happening. But if you're trying to make ends meet and to bring home food to your house, you have to work. And with that, right, all of these things come with it. And then the fifth one is parental resilience. And right, there are a lot of things that go into being resilient. And every day is different too. You might be a little bit more able to bounce back after something happens, but after that goes on day after day after day after day. And maybe growing up, you also didn't have parents that had a lot of that resilience. It can just get harder. On top of the other things I already talked about, that can be just another compounding factor with that. So as we look at all of these different factors that contribute to it, you can imagine probably like millions of different things that we could do, both individually, so how we could help, you know, our neighbor or our cousin or our friend who's a new mom, or maybe they're, you know, an old hat mom, but they need help and support too. And then also things that we can do on different levels. And I have some handouts that I'll sit over here that just talk about things that, you know, as at our places of worship, just as a community member, so like we all live somewhere, what can we do just on our own street that can be supportive? And then how can we get involved more at the, you know, community level, which sometimes is even looking at policies and how we can change those things too. But April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and it has been since 1983. Every, you know, community does different stuff for April. In LaPorte County, this year we are doing a kind of collaborative art activity between Healthy Families, and Head Start families, and hopefully also Boys and Girls Club, but we'll see. Which is really focusing on what is happy, like having happy childhoods, and connected in with that, like how do we, you know, have kids do art activities without it becoming a huge, like, oh, it's a mess, we don't want them to do this is bad. So supporting parents with that too. And we also do like give backs at Owls and Ace Hardware, and Full Tilt Arcade in LaPorte, which is what's more fun than arcade games, really. But the whole focus of April is to bring awareness to child abuse prevention. And the theme this year is building together prevention and partnership, which I think is really important at this time because there's so many different organizations and governmental entities and places of worship that are all impacting these factors that contribute to child abuse prevention. And celebrating that we all need to come together and, you know, work as one. Sometimes there's competition in the community, and figuring out those ways that we can work towards child abuse prevention more effectively. So we also, blue, it's great that you guys already have all your blue t-shirts on. For April Child Abuse Prevention Month, the color is also blue. And so every year we have blue t-shirts that are available. There's some of these up here too. So we have the blue t-shirts. We also have pinwheel garden kits, which I'll make sure that I get one to the church once we have all the parts of that kit together, so that you can have one here. People display the pinwheels differently, but they've become the symbol of Child Abuse Prevention Month and really looking at trying to make every childhood safe, healthy, and happy. Which all of these things we've talked about contribute to that. So if you're interested in, you know, getting a blue t-shirt or getting pinwheels, you can order them, but also if you would like some pinwheels and you can't afford them, please come talk to me because we will make sure that you get some one way or another. And we also have a big fundraiser in the fall with dragon boats, so it's a family fun festival that everyone is invited to as well. We have face painting and all of that type of stuff. Okay, so I think that's most of what I had to share. I am open though to any questions. If anything was confusing, please don't hesitate to ask because it's probably confusing to someone else too.
Based on the data, for children who are either abused or neglected.
Speak up, please, Jose.
For children who are abused and or neglected, do most of them come from single parents or from two-parent households?
Yeah, I'm actually not sure on that particular question, but I can say that there isn't, you know, one demographic or household makeup where child abuse and neglect happens. It is, you know, happening across the board. But I am happy to pull some of that data up and I can share it with you afterwards.
The reason why I asked that question is because there is a narrative that sometimes if the father is absent from a child's life, that has an impact, or mother, either way. And so I was just curious about what is the case makeup that is it either or? But of course, abuse is just not all inclusive. It just happens regardless, sadly. So.
Right, right. And in those situations too, a lot of it depends on what else is going on. So, right, if you can imagine a single family household, it can sometimes be more stressful to raise kids because you are trying to do it all alone. But sometimes you can see those things that buffer that if you have, supportive family members or friends that are all kind of working together. And so, yeah, it really depends on the context. But I will look into that as well. Thank you.
Sarah, are there some factors that point to other people observing some child that is abused?
Are there...
What are some of the symptoms of things that you need to be aware of that would point to someone who might be a child that is abused?
Right. So there are different types of abuse, and then there's neglect, of course, which neglect is less of a specific action enacted upon a child and more of something that is not happening at home. So right with neglect, a lot of time, which by the way, neglect is the most reported to the hotline. And don't let me forget to talk about these tip cards that I gave you too. So neglect is most common. So with that, often teachers are calling in those reports, looking at things like maybe dressed inappropriately for the weather, maybe not having food, or the kids saying something like, "Oh, we don't have any food at home," and these types of things. Those often get reported to the hotline. Physical abuse, again. It could be kind of anything, looking at marks that they might have. It might just be something a kid says to you, and you might not see any physical evidence of that, but they tell you that something happened. Same thing with the sexual abuse, and being able to then call and report that. On that note, though, everyone in Indiana, whether or not you work at an agency like me, or you're just some person who is in the state of Indiana, we're all required to report those situations. So if you suspect that something is happening in a home, required to call, and that's what we made these tip cards, because one of the things that we found is that even with good intentions, with which most people have, it can be hard to know, well, what do you do if a kid discloses something to you, or if you see something, right? Because you don't want to ask too many questions to them, or maybe mislead them accidentally by being like, oh, well, did this thing happen to you? Did that thing happen to you? So we have these tip cards that just give tips for if you are talking to a kid or you're with a kid and you notice some of these things, just to keep in mind that are kind of like supportive for making those calls to DCS. Also, though, on that note, right, especially with neglect, a lot of those things are, things that in the community we're able to help with. So making sure that people have food, it might just be connecting them to the soup kitchen or to the food pantries and making sure they know when those things are taking place. So it's kind of there can be a fine line between when would you make a call for neglect and when would you, provide them some of those services. So I think a lot of times it's easier kind of said than done looking at all of that. While I had the tip card, does anyone have any questions about the tip card?
So the number to use to report is up at the top?
The number you would use to report?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep, it's at the top there.
So you wouldn't report to Dunebrook or?
Correct. Yep, everyone in the state has that same number that they would be calling. And then what happens is at the state level, they kind of decide if it's something that they would give to the local level. And then from there, the county decides if they will send someone out to look into that. And then from there, they decide if they're going to actually, look into the case further and, dedicate more time and resources to it. Mhm.
Slightly different area I'm moving into. Years ago, we used to give, Dunebrook had like a closet where they had disposable diapers, wipes, and that kind of thing. Are you still doing something like that? And is that something that we could or should contribute to?
Yeah, absolutely. So we call it our Family Depot, and families in our Healthy Families program, they get points for like doing all kinds of stuff in the program, and then they come and use their points in the depot. So we have diapers, wipes. We take requests from families, so we'll have personal hygiene products, toys. Sometimes we'll have birthday party items that they could use points on for having birthday parties for the kids, and so it's kind of filled really floor to ceiling with all kinds of stuff. And yeah, we're always looking for more donations. We'd be happy if anyone wants to come see that. We can show you. We also have a book closet that we give books away. Every time we go to a family's house, we have books, and whenever we're out in the community with kids, we have books there too. Last year they have on here, we distributed over $16,000 worth of diapers, wipes, and personal, household products from our family.
So that would be something that we could contribute to. We could collect items to bring to you. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you had specific questions about some of those items that are most needed, we'd be more than happy to share a list with you.
Okay, and I have one other question.
Sure.
So here a few weeks ago, I guess the SNAP program, the amount of money that was going in the SNAP program or whatever was decreased or cut off or whatever. Anyway, how has that been affecting? Has that affected what you're doing right now, or not yet?
Yeah, I would say not so much yet, but will be. So a lot of the additional support that came with the pandemic, they've extended that every time it comes up, and now it's coming to an end with providing additional funds, and then also allowing for more people to be qualified to get those services. So as those things are cut, we're trying to make sure that those gaps are filled in with families so that they're still getting what they need, because even though we're not having as many COVID cases, we know that just because that's not happening as much, that families are still suffering. Groceries have skyrocketed, which I know we have all felt, and rent is just totally outrageous.
Yes.
And so families are still absolutely feeling that, and yeah, certainly will be impacting a lot of them. It seems like there's just always more that ends up impacting families. Does anyone have any other questions? Up here, I have, you're welcome to take a pinwheel. There are some magnets, some pens, additional handouts for the reporting cards. If you would like to keep some here at the church, I'd love for you to have a stack. Or if there's someone you know that you think it could be helpful for them, please take some for them too. And yeah, I think that is it. But please, come up if you have any additional questions. And if something comes up later, we can make sure that you get my contact information.
Okay.
And thank you for having me. I know I said at the beginning, but this, my first community presentation for Dunebrook, so
Did very
I
good.
appreciate the opportunity. Oh, I'm so sorry.
But how are you financed?
A lot of different ways. So we get, we do a lot of grants. Some are local, some are at the national level. We get money, some from the state. We have a lot of private funders as well. And then we have like the dragon boat race that we do. We get some money in April through just the events and activities that we have. So kind of anywhere and everywhere that we can.
Okay.
Great. Well, thank you all. Thank you.
That was very informative. All of us speakers said that tell us things that we don't know about, so we're really glad that we could come and talk to us. We do that here and there.
Oh, thank you very much.
All right, let's